Hello and welcome to your favorite Insider SlamBall podcast. This is SlamBall Nation, a platform focused on discussing the world's greatest sport, the sport of SlamBall. I'm your co-host, Brendan Kirsch, head coach of the undefeated, undisputed, 18-0, and most importantly, guys, world champion Mob. If it didn't have the world champion there, it wouldn't quite have the same effect, I don't think. Joined by my co-host, the beautiful, the intelligent, the also bald, the effervescent, if I might say, Hernando Planels Jr., head coach of the Buzzsaw. Coach H, what's happening, brother?
Listen, I'm excited to be here, and I know you guys are the world champions, but I'm just saying, when my home country in the Philippines starts a SlamBall team, you are going to be faced with the Manny Pacquiaos of the Philippines coming at the Mob, doing a 1-2 combination, getting ready to dunk on the Mob. But until then, yes, world champs.
I can't wait. I look forward to that. And before we introduce our guest for today, we do have some breaking news, Coach. Breaking news at SlamBall Nation. And that breaking news, well, it involves us. It involves SlamBall Nation. Happy to announce that we are now an official podcast of SlamBall. We are official, Coach. Tell us what that means.
Listen, number one, it's about time. I mean, it is definitely about time. It just means now we could put the word official in front of our SlamBall podcast.
It's been 3 episodes.
Yeah. Listen, this is amazing. Now, I do have to tell our viewers and listeners that doesn't mean we're getting any monetary stuff at all whatsoever. But that's okay. That's okay. Because we're trying to. But it allows us to get like breaking news. Although I think we need breaking news music, like do something like that to get it going.
Yeah, no doubt. This is also where I think I'm required to say that the views and opinions shared in this podcast are those of Coach H and I and our guest, may not be shared by SlamBall. In fact, they'll probably disagree with most of these opinions wholeheartedly. So if we say something stupid, it's not on SlamBall. It is on us. That should cover us, SlamBall Legal. That should cover us. I don't think they knew what to do with this, Coach, honestly. I think they, first of all, I don't think they've ever listened to the podcast. Otherwise, they never would have let us be an official podcast. But that benefits us. I think they said 2 head coaches, we're going to make it official. It was either that, fire us, or try to charge us some exorbitant licensing fee for using the term SlamBall. And I'm going to tell you, I'm excited that they picked the choice that they did. Now, there is no world, I can say this, there is no world where our fairy tale SlamBall careers do not end in being horribly, horribly fired, Coach, but it's not happening today.
That's right. I mean, we get hired to get fired. But listen, if they're going to come after us, they're going to have to go the other entities who also put the word SlamBall. There's like a workout ball. There's like these games. I mean, come on. We got to be last on the list because we're royalty. That's what I'm saying.
All right, Coach. I see a beautiful third bald man here on the podcast with us today. I'm gonna let you have the honors here.
Well, listen, today is a day that the world has been waiting for as a guest on the podcast. He is a former, maybe future SlamBall coach who's with the Bandits, was also with me on the Bouncers. He is a 4-time national championship from Randall University. He's the head coach of Oklahoma City University, one of the most storied basketball programs in the history of basketball. And one little tidbit, he was the best man at my wedding, although now I'm divorced. So, Mark, I apologize for wasting your time 23 years ago. Welcome to the show, Mark Berokoff.
Yes. I can't believe we're doing this. Like, this is like bringing back the crew together. I am so pumped, excited, and you guys look, as you guys say, both of you are very beautiful guys. I love it.
Well, I do absolutely nothing. I don't work out. I'm not on social media, so that helps. But we're happy to have you, Coach. I mean, you are one of, honestly, just a handful of people I've ever had the opportunity to coach this beautiful game of SlamBall. So happy to have you on. And I know you became, I'm not on the socials. I'm on Instagram. I do the SlamBall Coach BK on Instagram. That's very hyper focused on SlamBall. I don't know what's going on in the world, but Coach, I know that when SlamBall was happening and we were in season, you became, for lack of a better term, kind of the Adam Schefter of SlamBall. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I just, the first game aired and people were all over social media, and I'm like, I might as well jump in and give my commentary and my thoughts because there was a lot of craziness out there. And I just got to thinking, I actually know the people coaching and these people on TV. And there's some misinformation out there a lot of the time. And I took it upon myself. I am Adam Schefter of SlamBall. Sorry, Adam. I don't know. There's probably copyright laws, but whatever. But I felt I needed to get on social media and represent. I was like John Gruden. I wasn't fired from SlamBall, but I was like, the SlamBall guy that's not coaching anymore. So that's how it all turned about. That's how I got on social media with SlamBall.
Well, you were great, man. You were great. You're on the podcast. You were like spreading the joy of SlamBall. Like, I mean, just give us like when you first saw, what was the initial thoughts that you saw besides the fact that your very good compadres were on there looking amazing on SlamBall? What were your thoughts of the sport, of the new edition of SlamBall season, whatever they're going to call it?
Very honest, I was very jealous because there was this sport that I love. I got a call from SlamBall asking about my interest. But I'm a head coach at Oklahoma City, and I thought, you know what? I've got this very good young team coming in, and I better be very careful and be around. Other than the jealousy, I got over that really quick because my wife said no. I was like anybody that was interested about SlamBall. I was so excited to see you guys back. I was so excited to see the sport back. I was so excited to see that it was on ESPN and that the world was getting to see it, that there were commercials for it. And then the ball was jumped and the game went on. And I was just like, I cannot believe we're seeing SlamBall at this level. And it was so exciting, number one. And then number two, I got very frustrated because, and we'll probably go into this, but I was like, what is ESPN doing with these camera angles? And I was getting dizzy and I felt like I was playing a video game. And I really talked about that on social media because like they were asking these questions. We can't see this action and what's going on here. And I'm like tagging ESPN and stuff and saying like, we got to fix this. And I had no say in it, but they did fix it. But with that being said, I use this analogy a lot when people ask me what my initial thoughts were. SlamBall looked like a rookie quarterback playing on Monday Night Football for the first time. Wide-eyed and bright. But come on now. SlamBall's back, and it was amazing.
Yeah, no doubt. We had come a long way. I realized when I was driving from my house, my Airbnb out in Vegas to the arena, and you would see SlamBall billboards up, and it was like SlamBall, buy your tickets, whatever. Maybe I thought, man, that's so cool. We've come a real long way. But I agree with you, Coach. I think we all were kind of in agreement that we were a little shocked by the camera angles to start. And I honestly, I know we've talked about this. I'm not 100% sure it was really the broadcast fault. I mean, I think what nobody really understands yet still is that dark period between when SlamBall moves the court from the training facility to the actual arena where we play. That's a big deal for everybody because what ends up happening is it takes 5 days, to move that court. So what happens is you have your final team practice at the training facility and then you go dark. That court gets packed up, it gets moved, it gets set up in the arena. And for 5 days, the players can't practice SlamBall. Nobody can see SlamBall. The broadcast team is coming in and setting up at the exact same time that the court is going up. And they're trying to do their test camera angles and stuff like that while the court is being set up. And then it's like 24 hours. The court's up. You have a practice and a half. Cameras, broadcast is trying to get used to that. And then all of a sudden you're live on ESPN. So I still think that there's work to be done to try to figure out that 5-day dark period to get everybody prepared to not only play SlamBall, but also everything else involved, broadcast and all those other types of things.
Yeah, what I think one thing I like for him to move into, the NFL has something called the all 22 angle, where it's pretty much like a wide angle, right? But you see, it's really used for coaches, and I see a lot of guys are breaking that stuff down. That would be great for SlamBall to have as well too, the all 8 angle. Since there's 4 players on the we need the all 8 angle, so we see all 8 guys. But I think it really helps. It educates people with everything else in the game itself. But yeah, no, I totally agree. On board with everything you got to say.
Yeah, and I tried to explain to people that it's just that's not where you guys were actually practicing, and I think it's a whole different animal when you go from the warehouse practice facility. And move that court into where there's TV lights on and TV cameras and reporters walking around. And fans walking around, and it's a whole different atmosphere. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think when you go from practice facility to the game facility and the court, the springs get tightened up and the tramps get a little bit tighter. And I think that's people just don't realize that. And I was trying to explain to people, like, let's not be so judgmental about week one. Like, let's give this thing some time and let them get used to what's going on. And I think, I think the gameplay picked up as we went on, and it got really good.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, they don't know that Coach BK is like the Nick Saban of SlamBall, because they put out the new court, just like Nick Saban goes on the field, make sure like the pylon is correct and the angles and the 50-yard is not 49.5, it's 50. There's Coach Kirsch. He puts on his bright-eyed, I think the Paul Georges he was wearing, and he's bouncing around, and he's going, and he's like, Coach. He's like, look, this is me like pretending I'm bouncing on the trampoline, by the way. Yeah, Coach, I think this is a little tight. And of course I go on there, and I'm like, yeah, it's tight, man. Whoa. Hey, what's the deal around here with it? But that's like the bonus of having Coach. He's like jumping, because you're absolutely right. It is. There's different spots on the floor. The wood, trying to find the dead pieces. There was one piece where like the wood was like coming up when you like pressed on one end. It was like a seesaw. It was like, whoa, this is like a trapdoor situation that we have here that we had to fix and everything else. But Coach BK is all over that court, man.
Coach,
tape measures are out. Aaron, the basketball is not good enough.
Listen, that, you make fun of me. It really was. I mean, you could see it. There were areas of the court that were different when they put it together. We were practicing, and they were still like drilling screws in some of the hardwood. This is a true story too. I don't know what team was practicing before us, but they were setting up. If anybody in the audience saw the pregame starting lineup announcements, they did it. They did a really cool production. Lights went out. They had smoke coming through the trampolines. They were trying to figure out that the smoke coming out from underneath the trampolines, and they set a smoke machine in the wrong spot, and somebody on another team actually hit the scoring bed and came down in it sideways and like hit the smoke machine. Like, that's stuff that was really happening 24 hours to playing on ESPN.
That's awesome.
Man, I tease you, but we need guys like you who are on there, who are on point with all that stuff.
Just combing the court, for little things here and there. It's not my fault. Now, Coach, you were mentioning, what the reaction was on social media. For those of us who missed that, like, what were you hearing? What were the conspiracy theories or the misinformation and things that were out there?
There wasn't. It wasn't. What I saw was, you saw people that had watched SlamBall a long time ago, and their immediate thought was, why are they not playing the same way? And then it was, and I probably was part of it. The drifting issue was, I talked about that pretty heavily. The court was bigger. They didn't know any of the players. Those were just all the things people were running into. It was. The biggest thing was the game was different, and it seemed like there were strategies being played this year, and I don't think people caught on to it right away because they were so used to the way it used to be played. And I kept trying to say, I think they're trying to do this now, and you can see they're getting to the island more. There's more of this. There's more ball fakes and stuff like that, and I think people were just going crazy. One, they were just excited. I think they were so excited they didn't know what to do. And then two, you had the old school fans connecting with the new school, and it all kind of came together, and it was just this big jambalaya of people with all these ideas. So conspiracy theories, why was LaMonica the first week as the announcer? And why were the mob on? That was conspiracy. But I settled that down real quick. So.
The biggest conspiracy was thinking that the mob in a rumble is actually a freaking whatever they want to call it.
A rivalry. It was a rivalry, Coach. I mean, I don't know. It's the two original teams, and we did not get along. Our players and sometimes the coaching staffs did not get along over new SlamBall. I mean, I will never forget that game when the Rumble came into our locker room at halftime. right? And you had LaMonica Garrett and Chris Robbins and these football guys, and it was about to go down. It was like the Rumble players back in the day were dogs. And I'm talking about junkyard dogs. I'm talking about they wanted to fight you on the court. They wanted to fight you off the court. A lot of their gameplay, a lot of their strategy was intimidation. You know what I mean? And so it was a rivalry back in the day. Is it a rivalry now? No, I agree with you. It's not a rivalry now. Maybe one day again it will be, but there's new rivalries in SlamBall that we can all worry about, like the Buzzsaw Slashers.
Right. Listen, I just love that there's conspiracy things. I mean, next year, Mark, you may have to be telling people if you're not coaching that, there's probably a couple of dead bodies underneath the SlamBall court, that the springs are intertwined with someone's hair that was like a celebrity to make it stronger. Those little things that, we could just start planting things.
Oh, no.
Listen, it's the same thing. We can now say that the SlamBall court is flat, just like the earth. You know what I mean? It's like these are these things.
It sure, the SlamBall court sure was tilted the mob way, I would say.
Ridiculous. Coach, tell us though, you coach old SlamBall, seeing you SlamBall back, what were the biggest differences that you saw when you started watching it?
Well, I think the court being bigger really helps. Old SlamBall is just one pass and just go attack and try to destroy somebody. And it's like all out warfare. And I know warfare is probably not the right word to use, but it was just like all out chaos with some things mixed in here. And it was just constantly going at each other. It felt different. This season, the court was spaced. There was spacing. There looked like there was actual structure to what was going on, and guys knew some plays, and there was actions being run, and there were backside actions being run, and guys knew. You could call a set, and guys were running that. In old SlamBall, you could call a set once or twice a game. There was something new on every possession. And that's what I really enjoyed. I like seeing more action on the island. There was more strategy involved with it. The coaches, H was wearing a clipboard around him. I don't even know what it was. I paused it and tried to zoom in to see what plays were on there. But I enjoyed it because the spacing was so much better. And it wasn't just commotion and collisions all the time, which is still good. But I think the floor spacing and the wider floor really helped this season. And I really enjoyed seeing that.
Well, it was really my way of looking like an offensive coordinator. I don't know if you see what I do. I position myself to be like a SlamBall coach / offensive coordinator for a XFL team, USL team. They're combining each other. So maybe give me that look with the Chuck Taylors. It's a very, I didn't wear like a suit. I didn't wear a suit like the mob does, but we did have that. But you're right though. There's strategy involved. I went to a front office training camp during SlamBall, hosted by Brennan Scher, longtime NBA guy, and I met two coaches who coach overseas, and oh, you coach SlamBall? He goes, wait, there's strategy in SlamBall? I'm like, yeah, you got to come out there. There is real strategy, and what helps, the court being wider helps that. And I think as you'll see more defense strategy because the court is wider, maybe some different things as time goes on. Because right now, defensively, everybody falls back like they would on a basketball court instead of pressing up and doing different things with it. But, the strategy is a huge, huge part of it. Coach Kirsch knows because Coach Kirsch runs great strategy to try and get people up in the air offensively and defensively.
Well, I think offensively for sure, like Coach Berokoff, I think you hit the nail on the head. With the court being wider, it spread out the offense a little bit more. It made the attacking angles from the side a little bit better. The scoring bed was bigger, so there's sweet spots in the corners that you can get the stopper on that you couldn't before. But Coach H, I agree with you on the defensive side. To me, that was the thing that was the hardest to teach because if you were a player coming from it's funny because like Darius Clark, you look at him and he came from a track and field background. Of course, he played a little hoops. All these guys played a little hoops, but he comes from track and field. He didn't have as much trouble learning this as some of the other hoops guys did. But in SlamBall, when you're playing defense, the key is you cannot be, if you're off the ball, if you're an off the ball defender, you cannot be constantly checking to see what's happening with the ball. You have to really be bodied up with your man defensively and be tramp denying the entire way and not really worrying what's happening with the ball because it's all timing predicated and you're trying to disrupt timing of the opposing team's offense. And so what you saw, a lot of teams that had a lot of these guys, and if they didn't drill it, like I'll point out the Rumble as one of these teams. We played them in the opening night. And the one thing that amazed me is if you got the ball to the island, you had 3 guys just turning and watching. And it opened up the cutting lane so massively where you could cut 1 and 2 guys through untouched. So I think defensively, the strategy probably needs to develop a little bit, but I agree with you, Coach.
Yeah. I saw that happen in your game. I think it was Coach's H's team was taking away the baseline stuff and really working on that. I saw that strategy. I saw a team try a double stopper. That was interesting. I think we're going to get better with strategy with the wider court and defense pressing up and having maybe like a zone press type thing. Something's going to arise from the court being bigger, and I'm excited to see that. But I think the strategy got better as the season went on. But you were right. For maybe the week or so, there were guys' heads were just spinning around, and it was like, guys, come on now, let's focus in defensively here.
Yeah, you know who came out of the gates. Coach H and I, for people who don't know, is the Buzzsaw and the Mob were practice partners during training camp. So during the weeks of team camp, basically what would happen is you'd go by yourself, you practice by yourself for maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and then the other 4 or 5 days a week you practice with a practice partner, and we were practice partners. But when we got into the scrimmages, the team that I saw play great defense when they were totally healthy was the Wrath. We played them very first. It was the first full contact scrimmage the Mob had, and they kicked our ass. And a lot of it just had to do with like Ty McGee and Christian Gray, and some of their guys were so long and athletic that it was hard to get the ball past them. They really pushed up defensively, played great defense. So that was one team that stuck out to me where early on I was like, man, these guys are going to be a real problem for us. And unfortunately, just injuries hit. But I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Coach. I saw you were getting ready to say something.
No, you're absolutely right. I think what you saw though too, and we've spoken about this outside of the podcast, is how the season got better, the players got better, the strategy got better. Like if you look at the lava strategy was to always be in the tramp, right? So it took them a while to get their timing down. You guys with the Mob were always predicated. You're attacking. You got one cutter. You're throwing the lob. You're doing all those different things. And for us defensive, we wanted to press up more and try to disrupt a couple more things, and you saw it just elevated and changed over time. Like the lava got better because now they were in there, they were better inside, and now more guys because they were turning their head. And also when we were scouting, we saw teams like the Rumble, we saw teams like the Ozone, those 2 teams specifically. And I've said this before on the podcast, and how your offense and defense is kind of like where you saw where everybody finished, right? So we knew right away that with the Rumble and the Ozone, like they're turning their heads right away. So we just got to go. We just got to go with it. And those are the scouting things that you picked up. Mark, I mean, longtime basketball coach, you would have picked up the same thing as well, too.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest adjustments in SlamBall, especially if you have a basketball guy going into SlamBall. You are used to being in help side defense. You cannot really do that in SlamBall. You've got to. It's a big adjustment. Sometimes I think football guys pick it up a little bit better if they're a defensive back because they're always looking at their guy. They're not worrying about help side. So that's why SlamBall is so unique. You've got all these different sports colliding together, and I think that's why it's very cool. But you're right, H. As the season went on, you saw these teams that were kind of struggling early really got their rhythm going late in the season. And I think I was a big proponent of, I thought the Slashers definitely were going to be a Final Four team in the playoffs. I thought they just got better and better. And obviously I picked you 2 guys, but with what they were doing, Kevin and Stan, I really thought they were going to make a real big push late. So,
and I wonder, Brendan, I'm going to ask you this. I mean, you had 2 guys who weren't heavy. Like you're both, Cam and
Dak?
Thank you, Dak. Weren't like traditional like football, basketball guys. They played it, right? But they weren't traditional in that at that super high level. They were high level at other things. How did you find that you didn't have to break their habits as much as you did with the basketball guys that you had?
Yeah, I mean, and you guys both know this, but the basketball guys bring a skill set that is very helpful to slam ball.
Hmm.
But if you want to run a system like we run, which is just predicated on reads, misdirection, and lob, you need a whole bunch of different types of players. And we had that before, too. If you look at the mob historically, we had LaMonica Garrett, who couldn't dribble or pass. But you know what? He was a heck of a slam ball player. So you just have to know how to use those guys. And I think our strategy was we weren't looking at what anybody else was doing. You know, I heard in training camp, I heard coaches say, like, oh, man, Cam Hollins, guy can't dribble, guy can't pass. You know, he's probably not going to be a very good slam ball player. And I looked at him and I was like, man, I don't need him to dribble or pass. I need him to make excellent cuts and catch lobs 15 feet in the air and be fearless dunking on guys. And he did that just fine. And he ended up being a really good defender too. So I think it just depends. I think you have to have a balance of guys with hoops backgrounds, because certainly when you look at the handler position, that guy almost always you would think has to have a strong basketball background over some of the gunners. Your handlers got to know how to handle the ball and pass. And we talk about this before, but slam ball's played on 3 different axes, right? It's played on the court, on the wood, it's played in the slam zone, and it's played up in the air. And that makes passing so much more difficult because you're not just passing it on the court or making a lob to somebody. You're trying to pass it in the slam zone when 2 guys aren't on the same bounce. You're trying to throw lobs from the trampoline, and then you're worried about the open court as well. So I think there's just a balance of skill sets that all mesh. But that's the beauty of slam ball, right? Is that they can all these players come from different backgrounds and still be great at this sport.
So let me ask both of you guys, with the stuff you both talked about, when you were in training camp getting ready for the draft, did you draft accordingly to what you thought was going to fit your system? And on the other side of the thing, were there coaches that were just drafting because they were hearing other people think he's really good, he can't dribble? Did you draft towards your systems? Did you take into account what everybody else was saying, or did you go after and really identify the guys early in camp of these are the guys I wanted? Either one of you, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I was looking. I had a big board, and we did a mock draft and stuff. I still get in the way of the hard basketball stuff gets in the way a little bit for me. And I've noticed this in my last 2 cycles of slam ball, where I'm seeing someone, I'm like, oh yeah, they can move really well. They have all these intangibles, but how does that translate to slam ball? And so my first 3 picks, I knew they were going to be really solid. And my last 3 picks were, I thought were really good, but it was interesting just watching it develop and everything else. I mean, Coach Kirsch's team had a bunch of different guys who played different sports, and they all were really, really good. So predicated what he wanted. And my guys became more of a defensive-minded, tough. We couldn't score worth a damn, but we were able to do a few things that was really helpful. So I think it's really that I loved who I drafted. I mean, I definitely loved who I drafted. It was just I was like, okay, there are some things that I think I could have changed coaching wise that I think is going to help translate to slam. But a lot of it honestly has to be because my practice partner was Coach Kirsch, and you see things, you're like, okay, I see what he's doing and his teaching method and what his belief. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I don't know what that was.
I don't want to interrupt you, Brendan, because I know you want to comment on this, but on some podcasts that I did, this topic was brought up to me quite a bit about how you draft. Now, I wasn't privy to the draft. I wasn't privy to who was in the camp. But I have always said, I think you don't worry about anything but your system and what makes sense to you. And I don't think you care about anything like you picked a guy that Indiana Pacers trampoline guy or something at halftime. Like, that's pretty smart because he's in front of big crowds. He's in front of the TV lights, and he's on the trampoline quite a bit. So, Hernando, kind of answered is that how you looked at it? You saw the guys you wanted, you targeted them, and you just zoned in on them.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we knew what we were going to run coming in, and I think we talk about like the mob and the 18-0 and all that stuff. That never would have happened if the scoring bed wasn't as big as it was, because what ended up happening, Coach H saw this, or what ended up happening was everybody started designing offenses that they thought would be the next kind of phase of SlamBall where they were attacking off of the scoring bed. They were finding the sweet spots in the corners on an oversized bed and trying to attack the stopper that way. And we never bought into that. The mob, we never bought into it. We were like, we're going to do what we always did, which is we're going to attack from the outside. We're going to read the stopper all the way in. If he's late, we're looking for misdirection. If he's late, we're looking to attack. If he's on time, we're looking for misdirection options. And we practiced that from day one. And I think coming out of the gates, you saw that that was highly effective, as was some of the scoring bed stuff. But as the stoppers got better, you started to realize, like against Fessel Shafat and, certainly Gage Smith and Ty Scott, those guys, you realized that the scoring bed really wasn't going to be as available as you thought. So these teams halfway through the season started making adjustments, and they started running more misdirections and running a system that was more predicated on outside attacks. And I think that's where you saw the gap close towards the end of the season, where the games got a lot closer. No way that we would have gone undefeated if everybody had come out of the gates running the stuff that they were finishing the season with, in my opinion.
Cool.
But we did draft for system for sure. It was unique because you had a number of different things happening. Coach H is a veteran, right? Coach H is a veteran in basketball and in SlamBall. And I think we both were thinking the same thing. We got out on the court and taught during the Super 24 camp, which is what they kind of wanted the coaches to do. And then during the second week, when they brought in everybody else, and it was everybody in the Super 24 guys, we sat and evaluated. Like, we evaluated together, and we were evaluating talent and talking to players and trying to identify who we wanted to draft. When a lot of the other coaches, a lot of them were new, they were ex-players, they were still teaching on the court. And when you're teaching on the court all day, you don't have an opportunity to evaluate like we did. So that was part of our strategy. And I know Coach, he's not going to say it, he drafts based on a system. I mean, if you look at the bouncers, the old bouncers teams, and certainly this Buzzsaw team, the one thing that they always had was they always had a fantastic stopper, who he was talking about, Ty Scott, on day one. And they always let their stopper play and their defense, hard-nosed defense, lead into their offense, which is what they did again. And I know he mentions that the offense wasn't clicking. We practiced with them. They kicked our ass in half of the scrimmages that we played. I saw their offense operating at a very high level. So I disagree with that sentiment.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Well, but the other thing too, the other part is also how the draft is. You know, it's that snake draft.
Yep.
So I drafted second and then 16. Mm-hmm. And in that time, or whatever, and in that time, Brendan, I think you drafted two guys in between. Is that right? How it works? Yeah,
because we were four.
Right. So you really, I think as coaches, you have to say, like, okay, what kind of value am I getting at this pick based on what it is, and then go from there. And I think there is, like, drafting is strategy, right? Like, it's not, I think sometimes us coaches think, like, I could take anybody and we're going to go out there and win. Well, let's slow down a little bit. Let's draft some competent guys with it, you know?
Yeah.
But Coach, I want to know too, as you're watching SlamBall, what surprised you? Like, were there teams that you thought were going to be better that weren't? What stood out to you that was surprising as the season went on?
I went into the season with the mindset of wanting to know, and I learned from my mistakes. I still think the stopper is the most important spot in SlamBall, and I don't want to say what surprised me. I think it verified to me that you still need to have a good stopper to win. I was surprised by the level of the talent. I thought the talent was tremendous. And I think it took people a little bit time to get used to how talented these guys actually are. Again, going back to the older days where it was just these, I don't even know, like not like crazy athletic guys, but super strong, physical, dominant guys, to now we have longer, lanky, athletic, higher athletic guys that it was taking them a little bit longer, but I immediately saw the talent level was up. The ball handling was better. The positioning on defense, one-on-one, was much better. Guys were starting to figure it out in the air on things. I think that's got to get better. I think some guys were a little hesitant on contact in the air throughout the season. But not surprised, but verify that you still need a really good stopper to win in SlamBall. And if you don't have that, it's going to be a struggle. You could have all these great ideas and great offensive things, but if you cannot have somebody protecting the rim, you're going to struggle. You're really that it wasn't a surprise, but it verified that SlamBall is always going to be SlamBall and needs a stopper.
Yeah, no doubt. If you look at the four teams that ended up in the Final Four, you had Mob with Gage Smith, you had Slashers with Nathan Karstjens, and they ran. Who else did they run back there, Coach? It was Amir. Amir ran back there. Yeah. And then you had Buzzsaw with Ty Scott, and then you had Lava with Faisal Shafat. And so you've got four of the best stoppers in the league right there in the top four. So I agree with you 100%. And I think you saw, and Coach, I know you're going to jump in. I think you saw the stopper position evolve this season. I think that's where I think the stopper play in old SlamBall was better at the start of this season than it was for new SlamBall. That's the only thing I will say that I thought was better about old SlamBall was the stoppers were a little more fearless. I thought their timing was better. And I think a big part of that was the scoring bed being bigger. And the stoppers in new SlamBall have to take off from a little bit farther away. And if you watch old SlamBall, they always had a foot on the pad. They were ready to attack. And sometimes the undersized stoppers like Kevin Cassidy, they would show. They'd take a quick bounce and show if somebody was attacking, and then they'd go right back to the pad and be ready to get back in to stop a lob or something on the weak side. And with the scoring bed being so much bigger, the stoppers now have to commit to that bed, and they get in and they have to kind of commit, and they're bouncing around down there. And if you've got a guy bounce around in the scoring bed, longer that happens, more likely it is that they're going to be attacked from outside. But I thought you saw those guys improve dramatically throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. The other thing I saw a lot of Stan Fletcher influence. I know he worked with the guys. I saw a lot of Stan Fletcher jumping into the beds, trying to do some of his moves. And maybe that's just the inside knowledge that I knew that he was one of the guys teaching them. But I saw a lot of Stan Fletcher influence, a lot of guys wanting to be Stan Fletcher, which for me was kind of cool. But because I really love Stan and I love the way he played. But I saw that influence pretty heavy. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong on that?
No, I mean, that's where he drafted Tony Crosby. He was so excited to draft Tony Crosby because he was like, this guy has got a lot of athleticism and agility and toughness and heart and all the things that Stan had when he played. And he was like, if I can put a little bit of an imprint on this guy, he could be, the next Stan Fletcher. And he ended up being pretty close to that. He was a very good SlamBall player.
Yeah, he was really good. And, Stan, who has done a tremendous job of teaching the nuances of the game, was the big part of training camp as well too. Mm-hmm. And I think you saw that. And I think too, when people watch old SlamBall footage, right, they're watching the trickery. And that's the part, with players today, and I mentioned this before, they're more skilled because they want to try more things. Yep. Right? They want to try more things. When you watch old players, whether in any sport, they're talking about efficiency. Like, I listen to these old NBA guys. They're talking about like how they want to get, like Bernard King, old guy. He was talking about there was 8 spots on the court. He was trying to get to all the time, and he was no flash. Now guys want to get to the 8th spot and then 7th spot and then 5th spot and then work on and that's just the times now. And so they gravitated toward that. I mean, guys who you would ever. I mean, Greg Helt played for the Lava and the Rat. That guy, I was like, that guy's not going to get it. This dude is in warm-ups, facing one direction, throwing the ball backwards, and then coming around. And I'm like, but that's a trickery. And that's where I think the argument will come. That stuff, it's hard to work in a game. You're working on that stuff, but you got to work on the game stuff so you're really good at the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you talk about the players. One thing, and we're not breaking news, but because we are insider SlamBall people, we do continue to have conversations on a weekly basis with Mike Golub, who's the president of business operations, Mason Gordon, who's the CEO, Rob Wilson, who oversees player competition, certainly Stan and those guys. And a couple of the things that were mentioned on a call I was on with Mason Gordon recently was we were talking about what is going to be the plan for players, keeping players? How many players are our teams going to be able to keep? When are we going to be able to make those decisions? All that type of thing. And it sounds like they don't have it quite decided on yet. But the thing that he mentioned was we want teams to be able to keep a core intact if they want to, but it's going to come at a cost of draft capital. So I believe what could end up happening is you can call it up to 5, 6 more than we've been able to before, but it may count as your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth round picks. So if you're keeping one guy, that's your first round pick. You keep 2 guys, that's your first and second round pick. So you basically are foregoing any type of the new talent that might come into the pool. What do you think about that?
Well,
I mean, first off, if I'm a fan, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Because I want to see Coach H offer you 5 future first round picks for Gage Smith. So let's get that going. So is that something that I could breaking news on that is on the table and that Brendan is going back to Gage's people? But
Gage Smith is untouchable.
Yeah. No one's untouchable. But anyways, we'll talk later. But I think that's exciting. I think there should be the mob should be picking last, and the team that didn't win many games should have the first pick, because everybody, as we know now, is going to be trying to find the next Gage Smith. So there's going to probably be another Gage Smith out there. But I like that. Now for you coaches, you have strategy. Now you've got to think, do I keep 3? Boy, I love my 6. I don't like any of my guys. Is the next draft class going to be as good as the current draft class was?
Yeah.
Those are things to think about, and I think that's the next step for SlamBall. Now, you 2 coaches could maybe tell me if I'm wrong or right on that, but I know, H, you were trying to jump in, and I kind of cut you off, but that's my thought.
You know, that is so hard because there is no prior history of new guys coming in, right? So it's like you're saying, like, all right, you know, NFL, NBA, well, I saw them in college, I saw them overseas. Now it's like, well, I saw him jump at Sky Zone and he looks pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what? How am I dropping any of my guys to pick someone? Now, I'd love to see how that's going to happen. Obviously, I'm assuming, you know, there'll be another training camp. You watch the guys, and then, you start falling in love with guys, like everything we do and everything. But yeah, I think that would be really, really interesting. And then, of course, with a lot of guys being out of the pool who don't come back, now, of course, people are going to start talking about expansion, and we got to expand, and we got, it's just like, there's too many talented people. There's not, not enough spots. I mean, that's just life, but woo, I love it. What's coming.
Yeah. And it's also, I guess it depends on the timing. I mean, because you've got to think they're not going to make you make that decision as a coaching staff until you've evaluated the next crop of players. I mean, but it will be interesting, and there's going to be tough decisions to be made across the board for sure. And there very likely are going to be players that played in this league this past season that just aren't going to make it, next season, because we saw it happen before, where I always use Noah Ballou as an example. He was watching SlamBall on Spike TV when it was on Spike TV, and he was a college basketball player in Texas, and saw it and left after his freshman year. Said, I'm leaving, I'm going to go try SlamBall, and ended up being one of the best players that SlamBall has ever seen. So I think there's a crop of players out there, maybe that aren't in college and leaving early, but certainly a crop of players out there that saw SlamBall and ESPN that want to give it a try for this upcoming season.
I'll tell you, I talked about that a lot, and it's not a negative thing to say, but there has to be better players than there currently was if we want to keep this thing going. It cannot just be the same guys. And I am a believer that there are guys out there that are better than what we saw. Now, I think your top end guys are going to stay your top end. I think what SlamBall needs to get better at is the bottom end guys on the rosters. And I think with the new talent coming in, I think it's going to get better. What I would like to see personally is maybe a developmental team, the Buzzsaw developmental team. Now, you have your assistant coach them on in the evenings on separately. You have them come together as a full team. Now, if you have a developmental team, somebody gets hurt, you're not just throwing him in. They might be able to play games against each other, against the mob developmental team. I think, to me, that is something that I've been thinking about would be a next good step. Like our USA Soccer, like the Galaxy and all these MLS teams now have developmental teams. That could be a next step for SlamBall. Something that I just kind of was thinking outside the box. But I think there are better players out there, and I think we need better players in SlamBall. I think that'll make the game better.
Yeah, and we have Rob Wilson he oversees obviously competition. All of the coaches, all of the head coaches, and all of the assistant coaches have been invited to participate in kind of a rules discussion. because they want to identify what rules we think need to be changed, finessed, eliminated, added, all those types of things. So I know Coach H, like we had to submit a number of rules that we thought, needed to be adjusted. But one of the things he was talking about was they obviously want to add players to the roster because 7 is not enough. You lose one, it's devastating because you're going 7 deep, especially when you have to play back to back a lot. And so he was talking about adding not only 1, but maybe adding 2 players, but you can only keep 7 active at any given time. Mm-hmm. So basically, instead of having to pick somebody off like the Wrath got just devastated with injuries, and they were picking players up off of the taxi squad that didn't know their offense. And you're having to teach them offense in a very truncated period of time. Now you've got 9 guys, and each week you say, okay, these 7 are going to be active. They're going to be on the active roster, and their pay is different than the 2 players who are on the practice squad, for lack of a better term. And then the next week you can just pull up one of those players, their pay increases, drop a player, their pay decreases. I thought that was an interesting concept, Coach. I don't know what your thoughts are, only because then your guys know your system. They're practicing with you all year. So you don't have to pick up a guy when a guy gets injured and teach them everything that you're trying to run.
I mean, I love it. I think I think it's just needed. You just need more people involved in your team to know your stuff, as all you guys have been saying, but also be ready to go. I think it's great. And then you get to really develop other, players, because when they do expand to whatever, they're hopefully planning for, then we have a bigger pool of SlamBall guys instead of the guys who are in their 40s calling saying, hey, give me a shot again. Give me a shot again. No, we now have like real young guys. No offense to the guys who are 40 or over. I'm with you. But it's just what it is.
There are some of those ex-players in their 40s that are in good shape, Coach. I think they could give the Buzzsaw a quarter, or the Mob a quarter. We saw some of those guys. I asked, who did I ask? I asked George Bird. George Bird came back, and I said, George, how many minutes you think you could legitimately give a team? And he was thinking about it, and he was like, 2 minutes. He's like, I could give you 2 minutes, and that would be about it. But we'll see how it goes. Coach, we appreciate you being on today, Coach Berokoff. It's awesome to have you. Again, for people who don't know, it's a very small group of people, close-knit, small group of people that have ever coached this beautiful sport before. So Coach Berokoff is not only a champion college basketball coach, a winner on and off the court, a SlamBall coach. Coach, do you have any Adam Schefter type SlamBall breaking news to break for us right now?
Well, Hernando and I have been in talks, not about SlamBall. No, not yet. I'm excited to see what the next steps are for SlamBall. I had an absolute blast texting with the coaches and reconnecting. It was fun to see on all the social media stuff, the guys coming back and excited about it. I thought you two did a great job. Well done. Congrats on being the official SlamBall podcast. That's huge. I questioned some of that, but it's okay.
So do we.
But no, thanks for having me. You guys are awesome. You guys, we've always been close. My wife brought up a thing, Brennan, that we were over at your apartment after one of the games a long time ago. I don't know how she remembered that, but she remembered going over there. And I guess Hernando didn't remember because he was there also. But
I don't remember. It's so wild.
It's funny. You go back to think about those times, and I found randomly some pictures when SlamBall came back. I found it in like a whatever it is, and it's like, my gosh, that was so long ago, and we were so young. And look at us now. We have no hair. We're gray beards.
That's right.
We families, kids, and it's crazy. But congrats to you guys on a great season. I was really proud of you guys. I'm proud to see SlamBall back, and thanks for having me.
Coach, we love you. You did a great job, by the way. Coach Ballou and I were driving over to the Mob team house to watch film one day, and we heard you on Sam Roberts' podcast, Quantum Roberts. We heard you on his podcast, you and Craig Skitsmith, and we listened to the entire podcast as we were driving over, and you did such a good job. You're an awesome analyst, gave a great view on the sport for everybody who may not understand kind of the inner workings of it when obviously we couldn't have that opportunity. So awesome job there.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Coach H, you know what time it is. It's time for you to take us out of here.
That's right. Hold on. Let me put on the shades. Listen up, nation. We're official. We're officially in your hearts, your minds, and your soul, which means now we got to be officially taking over your body. So next week, you join us every single show follow the nation, the #1, if only, official SlamBall podcast in your heart, your mind, and your bodies. We love you. We'll see you later.
Well, we got to give Stan a shout out. Shake Up the Game.
Oh, yeah.
That's an official podcast too. Stan Fletcher, if you're listening to this podcast, it's a much better produced podcast because it's not a couple of 40-year-old guys doing it.
Yeah.
But Shake Up the Game, you got to check that out. It's awesome.